This segment's going to be one of those quick ones. It's to do with, for some reason, the BBC's vetting of certain people doesn't seem the best, and I guess these people are brought on in basic questionnaires. But Stephen Flynn calls out a Tory activist who gets to ask a question on this panel show. I found it quite funny.
Sorry, and the young man in the white T-shirt in front of you. Yeah, on you go.
It was just to come back to what Stephen said. Every time you answer a question, you go back to everything's Westminster's fault.
It is kind of, I wonder what part of Scotland they're in, because he does get a bit of applause in the points he makes. It's quite interesting.
It's the SNP that's in charge of Scottish education. It's the SNP that's in charge of Scottish justice. It's the SNP that's in charge of the NHS in Scotland.
I think I recognise the young man as a prominent Conservative activist, but notwithstanding that, when it comes to...
Are you a Conservative activist?
See, the host didn't know. And so, maybe when he filled in his questionnaire or whatever it was, maybe he didn't say he was a Conservative activist, or maybe he did, but it's very strange that the host wouldn't know that he was a Conservative activist if this BBC if the BBC vetted it properly.
Comes to, I'm just pointing out.
I've still got an opinion. I've still got an opinion.
I mean, yeah, you've got an opinion, but it's a politically charged opinion. It's you're a Conservative activist, like you're a card-carrying Conservative member. Like your opinions are going to be skewed, and I think you should mention that. It'd be like if you brought on someone from the SNP and they were randomly called on in the crowd, and you pretended they were just an ordinary member of the public who's got a question or got a point to make. It doesn't sit right.
And I still get to vote.
You've still got to vote.
And it's voters that keep you in your job.
And I wouldn't discount that at all.
So just answer the question.
And I will absolutely answer the question.
No, I've only got this clip from the National. I do. Flynn does get some criticism here from people in the tweets, but I think. He says that I was there because I wanted to challenge politicians on issues affecting my work. Should I be identified too because I had a motor or blah blah blah? The issue is that the overall Scotland's budget, as far as I'm aware, partially comes through taxation. They do have some powers, some devolution powers over taxation, but a lot of their budgets come from Westminster, like the Scottish NHS. The vast majority of their funding would come, I think, from the Barnett formula, which is kind of weird. I don't think it's even made public, but the SNP, the Scottish government do top up that budget, and that's one of the reasons why they can pay more for. Pay nurses more, for example. That's one of the reasons why they can get free prescriptions, for example, because they made budgetary decisions that are different from Westminster. So attacking, if there are failings with it, I'm sure, if there are more things that the SNP can do with things like healthcare and education, I think that's a fair criticism to make here. But I think this guy kind of failing to mention the fact that their money comes from, the money comes from Westminster typically. Obviously Scotland pays taxes, amongst other things, so that money goes into a pot and it's redistributed. I guess that's the better way to phrase it. But we know, like, the English NHS England is very much underfunded. NHS Wales is very much underfunded. NHS Northern Ireland is very much underfunded. And the irony is the Scottish NHS is actually doing the best out of the four. So, to attack kind of Stephen Flynn for saying that it's Westminster's fault, the NHS in Scotland isn't doing great. It's a fair point, I think. The stuff around education, I've heard that one banged on about for a while, so I don't know. It's something I will probably look at when I've got more time, to be honest. Let's look at the three he mentioned here.
It's the SNP that's in charge of Scottish education. It's the SNP that's in charge of Scottish justice. It's the SNP that's in charge of the NHS.
And, in terms of justice, the backlog of cases in the UK is tremendous. I wouldn't be surprised if the backlog to deal with cases, kind of court cases in Scotland was heavily backlogged either, but it's heavily backlogged in the rest of the United Kingdom as well because of the Conservatives, because of Westminster. So for Stephen Flynn to blame Westminster for the most part, it makes sense because they set the overall budget. So it doesn't matter how well you manage the money if you don't have enough money. Like, you can do better things with it. I think Scotland does a lot of good things with the money they have. Free prescriptions in England. We have to pay for those. It's capped at a price. They still have to pay for them. People in Scotland don't. In terms of university, I think theirs is either free or cheaper. I can't remember which one it is because people keep debating over it. But it's less. It costs less than it does in England. So clearly they have made different choices with the budgets they've been allocated. You know, like for the SNP to blame Westminster for everything, you know, it's easy and it makes sense politically to do so. But if you look at the resources that they have and the stuff they have done well from it, it's not hard to see that governance has played a part in this, and the SNP are doing better in certain areas than the Conservatives. But for this guy to come out and say, "Oh, you keep blaming Westminster and the Conservatives for all of these problems," as a kind of Tory act, well, he blamed Westminster specifically. He said Flynn blames Westminster specifically as a party activist. I don't know if that lands properly, mate, given it's your party that are causing the vast majority of problems. I mean, the Conservative Party in Scotland are that crap that they have, what's his name, man? Douglas Ross. That was it, sorry. I get him confused because Douglas Famori is his Twitter handle, but they have Douglas Ross. Is that the best you could do? I know you had Ruth Davidson before. He was a much more stronger candidate and didn't look like should blow away in a gust of wind. But your best is Douglas Ross, bro. I'd be more concerned with that than what the SNP are doing right now. But all in all, you know, I found it funny that Stephen Flynn just called out this random Tory activist for asking a question. And to be fair, the host kind of seemed surprised as well. And so the BBC should be doing a better job, I think, of vetting people that come on these shows. I know there's a lot of people and blah, 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 but, you know, it does show you that there are people, we've seen in Question Time as well, party activists that get on and manage to ask questions, who make political points, who are party activists and very much have an agenda. And if you are a party activist, you should say so. You know, he kind of looked like, oh my God, I've been called out here. Surely you'd be proud to be a Conservative, you know, card-carrying Conservative member. But, you know, he seemed very surprised and was like, oh no, I've been caught out. It's a bit embarrassing, to be honest. But anyways, you know, this was just a little fun video, I think. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. Yes, I'm allowed to do low-hanging fruit once in a while. And I'll catch you in the next one.